This video is dedicated to science fiction. Is there such a thing as a sociopath? Those of you who adore short videos, the answer is no. Move on. There's nothing to see here. Those of you who want to delve more deeply and profoundly into the subject matter, listen and watch the rest of this video. My name is Sam Vaknin. I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and I teach psychology in institutions of higher education. That makes me a professor. This channel is academic. It's authoritative. This channel has no truck with nonsensical proclamations by self-styled experts, inane and dumb posts on social media, or mainstream media hype. This channel is based on studies, on literature, on research, and on the cumulative body of knowledge over the past 150 years. So, to repeat the answer, there is no such thing as a sociopath. Let us resort to an authoritative source, the Dictionary of the American Psychological Association. It's available online, APA Dictionary. Type in the word sociopath, or sociopathic personality, or sociopathy, and this is what you're going to get. Sociopath, and I'm quoting, is the former name for an individual with an antisocial personality disorder, and that is 100% accurate. Sociopath is simply the previous name for a psychopath. They are not distinct. They are not two disorders. There's no such thing as psychopath or sociopath. Sociopath is a psychopath. It's the previous name. It's as if I were to change my name from Sam Vaknin to Donald Trump. Donald Trump would be the new name for Sam Vaknin. Sam Vaknin and Donald Trump wouldn't be two separate mental health disorders. Indeed, they're one and the same. Okay. Antisocial personality disorder is the current official name for the clinical entity and the diagnosis that is more commonly known as psychopathy. But the confusion there is not small, and I'm going to dwell on it a bit later. But let's get rid of one elephant in the room, the sociopathic elephant. No such thing as sociopathy, no such thing as sociopath, and any self-styled expert who claims otherwise is indeed only that, a self-styled non-expert, utterly ignorant of clinical psychology. Now, dissocial behavior is another term we use. It is the previous name for behavior associated with delinquent or criminal activities, such as gangsterism, racketeering, prostitution, or illegal gambling, or paying hush money to porn stars. So, dissocial behavior is the previous term, but it has snuck its way into the international classification of diseases. The ICD 11th edition is the competitor of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. 5th edition takes revision. These two editions compete with each other. There are two diagnostic manuals. And in the ICD, you have dissociality as a trait, being antisocial as a trait, but we'll no longer use the phrase dissocial behavior, not in the United States and North America, and not anywhere else. At the time, dissocial behavior was attributed to distorted moral and social influences, frequently aggravated by a broken home or a deprived environment. Such behavior is now regarded as an aspect of antisocial personality disorder. Dissocial behavior was interchangeably called sociopathic behavior. So, up until the 80s, we used to call people with antisocial personality disorder and psychopath, we used to call them sociopaths. Their behavior was sociopathic behavior or dissocial behavior. Their personality was sociopathic personality, and the whole condition was sociopathy. We no longer use these terms. They are not clinically rigorous. They are not used anymore. Anyone who uses them knows very little about clinical psychology. And I don't care if they have a PhD. Okay? Got the picture? Let's proceed. Psychopathy. Until the latest edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the text revision of the 5th edition, and I think also in the 5th edition itself in 2013, psychopathy as a diagnosis was excommunicated. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM committee, refused to acknowledge the existence of a separate clinical entity known as psychopathy. They said there's no such thing as psychopathy. It's just an aggravated form of antisocial personality disorder. This created a lot of debate in the community of clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, and so on and so forth. And finally, psychopathy has been introduced into the 5th edition. The text revision, for example, 2022, you can find psychopathy. I will discuss it in a minute. Psychopathy is a personality construct, not exactly a personality disorder, but a much wider or broader view of personality. Antisocial behavior is one element, one clinical feature in psychopathy, but there are others, like a diminished capacity for empathy, or no affective, emotional empathy, no remorse, poor behavioral controls, superficial charm, antagonism, and so on and so forth. Even propensity for externalized aggression, for violence. All these characterize the psychopath. And the psychopath is a variant of antisocial personality disorder. Under the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual taxonomic nosological system of classification, psychopathy is just one form of antisocial personality disorder. Psychopathic traits are assessed. There is a variety of tests, most famous of which was put together by the Canadian researcher Robert Hare, and it is known as the Psychopathy Checklist Revised, PCLR. Again, psychopathy is not the official name of any diagnosis, either in the ICD or in the DSM, but you can find psychopathy in the DSM as a variant of antisocial personality disorder, and it is characterized in the ICD by dissociality. So no major psychiatric organization uses the word psychopathy. Sociopathy is completely off the table. It's nothing to do with rigorous academic research, studies, teaching, textbooks, articles, scholarship. Forget about it. Sociopathy is an antiquated name for psychopathy. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing different. Pay attention. Nothing different. Okay. Both the DSM and the ICD state that the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder can be referred to as psychopathy. So we'll discuss psychopathy in the DSM in a few minutes. Let's go back 80 years to Hervik Leckley, psychiatrist in residence, who has written the masterpiece, The Mask of Sanity. Hervik Leckley described a variety of patients which he diagnosed as psychopaths. Now today we know that many of them were actually malignant narcissists, or even plain narcissists, plain vanilla narcissists. But at the time, narcissistic personality disorder has not been yet invented. It was first described by Heinz Kohut, in the 70s. So in the 40s, everyone who displayed any sign of antisociality or dissociality or maladaptation to social mores and conventions and expectations, anyone was grouped under the umbrella, the big tent of psychopathy, was called the psychopath. Cleckley's work on psychopathy formed the basis of the diagnostic criteria which we use today to diagnose antisocial personality disorder. But there's a lot of internal debate in the profession, as I told you. Critics argue that antisocial personality disorder should not be perceived as synonymous with psychopathy. The diagnostic criteria are not the same because criteria relating to personality traits are emphasized relatively less in antisocial personality disorder. And these differences exist because traits were believed to be difficult to measure reliably. It was easier to agree on behaviors rather than traits. And that's where the divorce between the ICD and the DSM took place. The DSM remained stuck in bullet lists, in generating bullet lists of essentially behaviors and relational interpersonal interactions and relationships, whereas the ICD is now focused on trait domains. ICD is becoming much more dimensional than categorical, whereas the DSM is still stuck in the 80s with its categorical approach. Within the DSM, there is an attempt to introduce a dimensional description or dimensional diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. Again, we'll discuss it in a minute. So, the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder has been applied in a variety of settings. And one of the main arguments against Robert Hare's work on psychopathy is that antisocial personality disorder as a diagnosis or the set of criteria or even the dimensional model, the alternative model of antisocial personality disorder they apply and they cover 2 to 3 times as many prisoners as the diagnosis of psychopathy. In other words, if you test prisoners for antisocial personality disorder, you will have 2 to 3 times bigger quantity of prisoners than if you test them only for psychopathy using Robert Hare's PCLR. Robert Hare insists, perhaps counterfactually, that the PCLR is better able to predict future criminality, violence, and recidivism than a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. This is not entirely substantiated, and one should always bear in mind the PCLR is not free. It's a commercial product and has many drawbacks. Hare suggested that there are differences between the PCLR diagnosed psychopaths and non-psychopaths when it comes to, and I'm quoting, the processing and use of linguistic and emotional information, whatever that means, and that these differences are potentially smaller between those diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and without. Hare also argued that the confusion now on how and when to diagnose antisocial personality disorder and regarding the difference between antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy, this confusion is not helpful because it hampers our ability to prognosticate, to create prognosis regarding crucial behaviors such as recidivism, reoffending, and treatability, how treatable the conditions are. There are serious consequences to this confusion. For example, in court cases where psychopathy is often seen as an aggravating feature, an aggravating dimension of the crime. Psychopathy has been frequently proposed as a specifier under the alternative model of antisocial personality disorder, and finally this has been accepted. In the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5, in the alternative model for personality disorders, there is something called antisocial personality disorders with psychopathic features, and I will come to it in a minute. Theodore Millon, one of the giants of the field, the late Theodore Millon, suggested that there are subtypes of psychopaths, or subtypes actually in his In his classification, he didn't use the word psychopath. He used the word antisocial personality disorder. He used the phrase. So he suggested there are 5 types of people with antisocial personality disorder. This has been never accepted by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual Committee or by the ASPD committee. And yet, it is still widely used. Millon has also constructed a test, a psychological test, that is in wide use. So, here are the 5 subtypes of antisocials. There's the nomadic antisocial, schizoid, avoidant type of antisocial person. And these are drifters, roamers, vagrants, adventurers, itinerant vagabonds, tramps, wanderers. They typically adapt easily in difficult situations. They're shrewd and they're impulsive. Their mood centers in doom and invincibility. Survivalists, many survivalists are like that. Okay, then there is the malevolent antisocial. This kind of person is sadistic and paranoid, belligerent, mordant, rancorous, vicious, malignant, brutal, resentful. He participates in betrayal and punishment. He desires revenge. He is truculent, callous, fearless, guiltless. Many dangerous criminals, including serial killers, are this type of psychopath. Then there is the covetous antisocial. The covetous antisocial is sometimes negativistic, passive-aggressive. This kind of antisocial is rapacious, begrudging, discontentedly yearning, hostile and domineering, envious, avaricious, pleasures more in taking than in having. The risk-taking antisocial includes histrionic features. He is dauntless, venturesome, intrepid, bold, audacious, daring, reckless, foolhardy, heedless, unfazed by hazard, pursues perilous ventures, risk and thrill seeker. And finally, there's a reputation-defending antisocial, which is essentially a narcissistic antisocial, or maybe a malignant narcissist. This kind of person needs to be thought of as infallible, unbreakable, indomitable, formidable, inviolable, intransigent where status is questioned, and overreacts to slights, is hypervigilant. Millon has expanded this classification or taxonomy and created actually 10, at the end of his life, he created 10 such categories of antisocial: covetous, risk-taking, malevolent, tyrannical, malignant, disingenuous, explosive, and abrasive. But I will not go into this much deeper. Let me read to you what the latest edition of the DSM, edition 5, text revision, has to say about antisocial personality disorder, the alternative model, the dimensional model, which is the future of the DSM and will probably prevail in the next 6th edition. Here's what the DSM has to say. Typical features of antisocial personality disorder are a failure to conform to lawful and ethical behavior and an egocentric, callous lack of concern for others accompanied by deceitfulness, irresponsibility, manipulativeness, and or risk-taking. Characteristic difficulties are apparent in identity, self-direction, empathy, and or intimacy as described below, along with specific maladaptive traits in the domains of antagonism and disinhibition. Proposed diagnostic criteria: A. Moderate or greater impairment in personality functioning, manifested by characteristic difficulties in 2 or more of the following 4 areas. Area number 1, identity, egocentrism, self-esteem derived from personal gain, power, or pleasure. Area 2, self-direction, goal setting based on personal gratification, absence of prosocial internal standards associated with failure to conform to lawful or culturally normative ethical behavior. Area number 3, Empathy, lack of concern for feelings, needs, or suffering of others. Lack of remorse after hurting or mistreating another. Number 4, intimacy, incapacity for mutually intimate relationships, as exploitation is a primary means of relating to others, including by deceit and coercion. Use of dominance or intimidation to control other people. B. 6 or more of the following 7 pathological personality traits. Number 1, manipulativeness, Machiavellianism, an aspect of antagonism, frequent use of subterfuge to influence or control other people, use of seduction, charm, glibness, or ingratiation to achieve one's ends. Number 2, callousness, an aspect of antagonism, lack of concern for feelings or problems of others, lack of guilt or remorse about the negative or harmful effects of one's actions on others, aggression and sadism. Number 3, deceitfulness, an aspect of antagonism, dishonesty and fraudulence, misrepresentation of self, embellishment or fabrication when relating events. Number 4, hostility, an aspect of antagonism, persistent or frequently angry feelings, anger or irritability in response to minor slights and insults, mean, nasty, or vengeful behavior. Number 5, risk-taking, an aspect of disinhibition, engagement in dangerous, risky, and potentially self-damaging activities, unnecessarily and without regard for consequences. Boredom proneness, prone to boredom, and thoughtless initiation of activities to counter boredom. Lack of concern for one's limitations and denial of the reality of personal danger. Number 6, impulsivity, an aspect of disinhibition, acting on the spur of the moment in response to immediate stimuli, acting on a momentary basis without a plan or consideration for outcomes, difficulty establishing and following plans. Number 7, irresponsibility, an aspect of disinhibition, disregard for and failure to honor financial and other obligations or commitments, lack of respect for and lack of follow-through on agreements and promises. Note, the individual is at least 18 years of age. Specify if the person has psychopathic features. That's where Robert Hare's work comes in. A distinct variant, often termed psychopathy or primary psychopathy, is marked by a lack of anxiety or fear and by a bold interpersonal style that may mask maladaptive behaviors, for example, fraudulence. This psychopathic variant is characterized by low levels of anxiousness, negative affectivity domain, and withdrawal, detachment domain, and high levels of attention-seeking, antagonism domain. High attention-seeking and low withdrawal capture the social potency, assertive dominant component of psychopathy, whereas low anxiousness captures the stress immunity, emotional stability and resilience component. In addition to psychopathic features, traits and personality functioning specifiers may be used to record other personality features that may be present in antisocial personality disorder, but are not required for the diagnosis. For example, traits of negative affectivity, for example, anxiousness, are not diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, but can be specified when appropriate. Furthermore, although moderate or great impairment in personality functioning is required for the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, the level of personality functioning can also be specified. This text is already old, antiquated. We know, for example, that anxiousness is a feature of psychopathy. We also know that there is another type of psychopath, the secondary psychopath, which is not mentioned in this text. And we are beginning to have a more nuanced view of the psychopath's lack of empathy. We believe that the psychopath possesses cold empathy, cognitive and reflexive empathy, but not affective or emotional empathy. Be that as it may, to come back to the very beginning of this video when we were all much younger and much more cheerful. Is there such a thing as a sociopath? No, there isn't. It's just the old name for a psychopath. I hope you got it this time.